Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Hey, don't forget my pimento cheese. Of course.
It's okay, I'll take it from here.
Hey, get the guy get a seat!
For the love of palmetto cheese.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make this an evergreen show. We call this because, hey, we took Christmas off, and this is what we're going to do. We're rolling this show. We taped it last week, but we're going to talk some nostalgia. My man Frank Duffy, who was on last week, if you love the old Tulane LSU stuff, the New Orleans Jazz, the old New Orleans Saints stuff, and even those old Super Bowls that were played at Tulane Stadium and a few in the Dome as well, well, this show's just for you. So here we're going to go. I'm bringing Frank Duffy back. He was here last week with that great segment, and we're going to continue it this week. It's Christmas. I hope you all had a great Christmas day and getting ready for New Year's. It's cold out there, everybody. Welcome.
Happy New Year, brother.
Back, Frank.
Absolutely, man.
From a couple hours ago, but last week. So, hey,
the magic of television.
We had so much fun last week just talking about the Saints and Falcons rivalry.
Yep.
I mean, great. I mean, we've won 15, of the last 25 games. You got to love them whipping them up. No, actually 25 of the last 40 games. Mm-hmm. Even better. I love those percentages. But now let's talk about some Tulane LSU. If you're young, you might not remember all this Tulane LSU stuff because that's what they used to play for years. 1973, Tulane broke a 25-game losing streak to the Tigers. They played every single year, and they won that game 14-0. You remember it?
I'm a huge LSU fan now, but I was a big Tulane fan back then. I was a ball boy on the team.
Yeah.
And so when LSU finally lost to the Wave, I can still taste the incredible pepperoni pizza at the Rathskeller after the game at the UC. That was a big deal.
And that was a big deal, too.
That's the rag.
That's the rag, and explain what the rag means.
Well, the Tulane LSU rag was it went to whoever won that game, and it resided in the bookstore of that university. And somehow it's gotten lost over antiquity. We don't know where it is. Some people have their thoughts. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm not going to say, but I heard somebody might have it. I don't know. But moving forward, this rag was a big deal. My first memory was that 73 game. It was just epic. 84,000 people slammed into that 80,000-seat stadium. For those of you who don't know, that game used to be the home of the Sugar Bowl every year from 1935 on till 1975 when they went to the Dome. And then, obviously the Saints played their first several years from 67 to 74 there. And obviously the Super Bowls. There's a few there. But let's talk about the Tulane LSU thing. Yeah. Because from your days, like growing up.
Well, first of all, Tulane University, that stadium was incredible. In fact, my grandfather was on the team that laid all the brickwork to that facade way back in 1920 some odd.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's always been special to me. I always loved going into the games. Walking, we lived uptown, so you could walk down Broadway, go to Willow, go right to the game, right? But the Tulane LSU game back in the day, oh, absolutely. Norby's, the loser got had a
picture we're looking at right
had
there.
to push the winner in the wheelbarrow, baby. So, but what was cool about the Tulane LSU game, if you were from Louisiana, you were from New Orleans.
Yeah.
That meant 365 days of glee or hell.
Right.
If you lost that ball game, and as Tulane fans growing up, man, we were on the short end of the stick.
Right.
Until 1973, 14-0.
And then it's funny because I didn't really like LSU till my brother went there, and I went to see LSU play Rice, and they won 77-0. But my second game ever was epic. That's USC, #1 in the country. Charles White, Heisman Trophy winner. They came in.
Yep.
I got stuck. I mean, I was like 13 years old, maybe 14, and he put me on the field at first because he was a manager of the football team, and then they kicked me out of there, so he put me in the student section.
Oh,
and I'm
gosh.
like 14, and the stadium was rocking. I could smell bourbon all through it.
Yep.
And LSU lost 17-12. They scored the game-winning touchdown. Benji Thibodeau got called for an offensive face mask or
phantom
whatever.
BS.
Phantom call. We could have beat the #1 team, but that got me on LSU. But I'm one of those guys, because back then you either had to be one or the other. And then from that moment on, I wasn't going to lose my loyalty from Tulane from the early days, so I fell in love with both.
Yeah.
And then, like you, I went to LSU, and then once you get there, you just hooked in, especially if they're winning, and they were. And it just became something special. But I love both these teams.
I do too. Both you and I are that rare breed that like both teams. And it was when I was a pledge at LSU, we were both Kappa Sigmas. That's when my allegiance went to LSU. But until then, I was dyed in the wool green wave. And like I said, being a ball boy back in the 70s was awesome. I got to know all the guys. I used to hold for Eddie Murray. He was practicing kicks from Tulane Stadium.
Great NFL kicker with the Lions for many years.
Rock Hannes, all that crew. But it was just when you were from New Orleans, that was the game, and you circled it every year. And the unique thing about the Tulane LSU game, also that one in '73, most people don't remember this, but the great game was 1972, right before it.
That's a highlight from it right there.
Where LSU stopped Tulane on the 1 foot line, 9-3, and Tulane would have won that ball game. And it was another rarity. It was both of them were home and home. It was a rare time.
Right.
But you, man, there was a time, Scott, when I could tell you the lineage of every LSU Tulane game and what happened during that game. And unfortunately, as the 90s wore on and in 2000, the rivalry just fizzled away. But for those of us that grew up in the 60s and 70s and even in the 80s, it was such a pivotal day on the sports year.
We can just talk about some things right now. Let's even go past the, LSU won a few more in a row after that 73 loss. But then from 79 to 82, those 4 seasons, 79, 80, 81, 82, they beat LSU 3 out of 4.
Yes.
Reggie Reginelli was a star. Rock Hannes, you mentioned him.
Yep.
And then I can go further just on a memory off the top of my head. There's a blocked field goal. I think we have the highlight of that when that was a big deal right there. Well, that was a field goal. There's another one that's a block. But that was a huge play. And you know the year. You know what happened in that game.
Well, I'll tell you what. My painful time was watching Vince Manala stumble, rumbling around with that rubber band on his foot, on his bare foot. Yeah. And they beat us 48-7 on that last play.
Well, who's us? We like them both.
Well, I know, but I was LSU at the time. And I'm sitting there, and Tulane, rubbed it in 48-7.
Was this the year that we had just beaten Florida State to go to the
No, that was Reginelli's year.
Okay.
Reggie Reginelli came up with Tulane in Tiger Stadium, and we had beat Florida State 2 weeks before. Okay.
Yeah.
And we were going to the Orange Bowl.
Right.
Now, but also people don't forget that we lost to Mississippi State on a Dana Moore 50-yard field goal. So LSU coming into that Tulane game was a little reeling, but we expected to blow Tulane out. I think we were like 25, 26-point favorites. But Tulane came in, and I have never seen one guy take over a football game like Reggie Reginelli did that night.
Yeah, he was great. And it's weird, some things you remember. I'm being like toward the end of my college career. Harvey Williams is a great running back from Hempstead, Texas, and he came in. He was the #1 running back in the country. He had an up-and-down career at LSU, but he played a long time in the pros with the Chiefs and the Raiders, of course. But he blew his knee out. Phantom, nobody touched him on the carpet at the Dome there.
I remember that.
And it's one of those, you hear all these injuries. You see them all the time, knee injuries. Without even anybody touching you, you see them almost every week. And that was the first one I'd ever seen like that.
Yeah.
They don't even know if they called it ACL
87, 88, somewhere in that range.
It was 88, I believe, but they just called it a knee injury. Well, you had a bad knee. You must
shoot it up and back in.
Right. But his knee literally separated from his whole body. But moving forward, that rivalry was so much fun over the years. Any other part of Tulane LSU? when you think of those football teams, that you have great memories of?
I remember the freshman games. I thought the freshman games were cool. We would hang out at Tulane Stadium. There might be, 20,000 people in there. But they were great players because back then you didn't have a lot of freshmen that were going to be on the varsity team. So you saw the stars of tomorrow.
Yeah.
But, think about a freshman game having 30,000 people in it in Tulane Stadium.
And that's what the new stadium Tulane has now. That's the capacity.
Yeah.
It's 30,000. That's what the freshman game was getting, literally, the passion for football. And it's getting back to that. But an 80,000 seat stadium. I'm not saying they pack that every week, but they did it against LSU, that's for sure. I'm going to go ahead and say this. John Chase. Great artist. He had the programs. Now this is a little collage of all few of them, but we're going to show some individually from like the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Classic.
1949, 25-cent program. I mean, I love it. He's got the tiger by the tail. Cats don't like to get held by the tail. Let's see if cats have 9 lives.
Yep.
I mean, that's so classic.
Oh. Mr. Chase definitely had a Tulane bend to him. There's no doubt.
I've noticed these are all Tulane home games. What? He didn't do it for LSU yet. I'm just realizing that these are for the Tulane Green Wave. Yeah, he's painting the poor tiger green. That ain't cool, but these are hilarious.
But again, it shows the history of the rivalry, right? And it was the heyday. And look, you had Eddie Price on those Tulane teams. Then you had the Charlie McClendon coach teams in the 60s, all the way up to Charlie Alexander. I remember being a ball boy in Tiger Stadium. My first night in Tiger Stadium, I was for the opposing team, walking past Mike the Tiger's cage to walk in.
Yes.
I looked over at Jaime Garza. He looked at me. Neither one of us wanted to walk onto the field. It was incredible. But it was such a just every minute of those games you can almost remember. And Charlie Alexander single-handedly won in '74.
Charles Alexander, once again, you youngsters, I feel
Google it.
You better Google him up. Ask somebody, because this guy was. They had the Heisman Trophy. He finished second for Heisman, and it was Alexander. His number was 4. Heisman, which is one of the reasons I wore 4 in high school. Because I love my man Charles Alexander.
Yep.
Let's switch gears over to a little bit of more football, but in games that were played in that same Tulane Stadium, some Super Bowls. Now people will remember more recent ones, right? They just had the one, a couple years back. They obviously had the one in 13, right? That's the one with the Ravens and the
nights the lights went out in the dome, baby.
The lights went out. They've had some ones with the Rams and the Patriots, the beginning of that dynasty, more recent, and then before that it was the Patriots losing to the Packers, right?
Green Bay, yep.
So, but look, we're going to go way back. We're going to go way back when we were young.
Which
Tulane Stadium.
I can remember those better than I can the more recent ones. I really can.
Because I can remember the Tulane Stadium years and even the years and everything that happened. But let's go to your first one, which I wasn't at this one, Kansas City and the Vikings. What are your memories from that one in 1971?
I remember the dapper Hank Stram, and the whole thing about it was coming in was, can the AFL sustain that momentum that they had when Joe Willie Namath went off the
you got to explain the AFL, because okay, real quick, there was no AFC, NFC.
Yep.
These were 2 leagues. The National Football League has been around forever. The American Football League was started in 1960. So that was the JV league.
The fun upstart, though.
So they started playing Super Bowls in 67 and 66 season. But that was the first one. Now, this was like the 4th one, I believe.
And Green Bay had just waxed the Oakland Raiders. They waxed the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
But then Joe Willie Namath said,
16-point
I'm winning this, baby. I went off with the 1. So the next year was, can this be sustained?
First one in New Orleans,
Minnesota and Kansas City. And Minnesota came in with a monster of a team. In fact, they were called the Purple People Eaters on defense, right?
Yeah.
You can go get a drink still today over at Pat O'Brien's called the Purple People Eater from everybody that came in from Minnesota. They thought they were winning that game. And there was Hank Stram over on the sideline, Dapper Hank, Lenny Dawson,
Joe Kapp was
Otis
the quarterback
Taylor
for the Vikings.
Yep.
Because Fran Tarkin started 4 Super Bowls,
Chuck Foreman.
But that's the only one that Fran didn't start.
Correct.
Joe Kapp, but they were 0-4 in those Super Bowls. We're going to talk about another one of those in a second. There's Kapp right there. But that defense, Buck Buchanan, Charlie Lanier, all those guys for the Chiefs. And, of course, the enigmatic Hank Stram on the sideline. The first time, but Lombardi was a little bit mic'd up. He would say, well, what are we doing out there? But Hank Stram was the one they mic'd up for the entire game.
Come on, boys, let's go down there and we'll matriculate down this field. Come on,
Exactly.
boys.
We're
Come on,
gonna
boys.
matriculate. I mean, because that's when
Atta
NFL
boy.
Films was ahead of their time, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, they were
The
phenomenal.
Sables. Yep.
The Sables, the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field.
John Facenda.
But they would do
the voice
these
of
great
God.
things, and Hank Stram obviously ended up being a coach with the Saints, but his first, obviously, milestone of his career was winning that Super Bowl.
Don't quote me. I think it was 16-7, and I'm telling you what, they had them, and there was nothing that the Vikings could do. But what was cool about it was the Vikings' defense was incredible. You had Carl Eller, Page, Marshall on that front
Sutherland.
line, and so Lenny Dawson had a game of games, and so you just had this, in fact, it forced the NFL to capitulate to bring the AFL in.
That's it. There
That
you
was
go.
the game that did it.
And then the Colts won the next one, but then they came back, and then that's my first Super Bowl was the Dolphins and Cowboys, and the Cowboys whipped their butt, 24-3. I remember that. It was a very sunny day. It was beautiful, but they were all a little bit chilly.
Cold, very cold. And my uncle, Arthur Bertucci, God rest his soul, he passed away a couple of years ago. He was on the New Orleans Police Force for 35 years. He was in charge of the Nazi buses leaving Tulane Stadium. And he would sneak me in every game, and I'd stand right there by the bandstand. I watched Alabama and Notre Dame for the Sugar Bowl for the national championship.
Yeah.
But that Super Bowl sitting there, I was a big Dallas Cowboy fan.
Roger
still.
Staubach, how great was he?
Roger the Dodger, right?
Yeah.
Dwayne Thomas, there's a name. Calvin Hill.
But the defense, Bob Lilly. I mean,
Oh
keep
man,
going on.
Chuck Howley. They were a great team, and they throttled Miami. Miami didn't have a chance, and that
Leroy
was
Jordan,
absolutely
Walt Garrison on offense.
Absolutely, and Dan Reeves. Dan Reeves was on that team.
Yeah.
So I can still remember Tom Landry iconically being carried off on Bob Lilly's shoulders. The glint of the sun as the sun is setting on old Tulane Stadium through those openings in the stadium. In fact, I think we've got a shot with that. You couldn't miss it in NFL
Well, that's going to be in
films.
this
You knew
next
what it
Super
was.
Bowl. The opening of the stadium. I have a shot of, you can see the side, the way the stadium was built.
Yep.
And this was my first real great memory of a Super Bowl that I was at, because I was a kid young, and I remember the game. But this one in Super Bowl IX, Vikings and Steelers.
The coldest of them all.
To me, the greatest collection of players for one Super Bowl. I can name you the entire starting 44, meaning 22 on each team, because about half those guys are Hall of Famers.
Steel curtain.
They're half. I mean,
incredible.
both defensive lines. You mentioned Vikings line was the same. I mean, those purple people.
correct.
There's Franco Harris. There's Sutherland, who I mentioned as the fourth guy. You see him on the ground right there. But you mentioned Carl Eller, Alan Page, Jim Marshall, Hall of Famers all. But the other side, the Steelers, there's Mean Joe Green. How about that line? Ernie Holmes, Arrowhead. You got L.C. Greenwood. You got Dwight White. I mean, the linebackers.
How about Lambert, Ham,
Russell?
Oh man, they were great.
Mel Blunt. There's Ham right there.
Yeah.
All these guys are Hall of Famers, man. And this was an amazing game. It was such a cold, blustery day that I remember this so vividly. It's the coldest Super Bowl ever that was played outside. There's been other cold weather Super Bowls, obviously, in Minneapolis. Why would they ever do that? Go there. Detroit and the Silverdome. Why would they go there? But there was snow. But this was the one. It was bone chilling.
Yes,
like
it was.
In the 20s, and with the below sea level, feels like it was like below 10.
I went to the first two. I didn't go to that one. I went over to my grandma's in Carrollton, and it was because the ice had knocked one of the tree limbs down. It blew out their electricity. I listened to the game, that Super Bowl, on a transistor, huddled around her gas stove on Eagle Street in Carrollton. That's how we listened to that.
I sold programs to my older brothers. I had one brother 7 years older, so he was 16. Another brother 14 years older, so he was like 23. And you know them.
Whitney keeping you in line.
No, and I still have this. I said this last week. I still have the credential. It says Super Bowl IX, and it's a diamond shape. And I remember my mother and aunt brought us hot chocolate because we were like, I couldn't feel my fingers. I'd never been that cool. And instead of drinking it, I poured it all over my feet, like I did. I was like through my shoes. And I was just like, it was such a great memory.
And it was such a defensive battle. It's what you would think of with these two teams, man. It was awesome.
What you don't remember if you weren't there is that they didn't start it. It took like 2.5, 3 minutes to start it because the ball kept falling off the tee.
Because
so Roy Jarrella, the great kicker, and he was like, "Come on, let me kick it." So they had to hold it like that. That's a rule after
Jarrella's Gorillas. In fact, I think that was the start of that rule. Honestly, that's when they did it. Yeah, it's crazy.
But they had to do that. But even like we talk about the Vikings offense. I mean, Fran Tarkin and Chuck Foreman. I mean, you had Gilliam, who had gone from being the Saints, first time the Saints ever touched the ball in '67, touchdown for the kickoff against the Rams. Well, he ended up being a superstar receiver for
Sure did.
Sammy
That's
White was
right.
playing with them. But that was just epic. And then moving on, they had games in the Dome. They had, Craig Morton against Roger
Dallas
Staubach.
and Denver, yeah.
Dallas and Denver. Dallas won that.
Golden Richards on that catch. That was incredible, man.
Some great memories. I mean, we have a couple shots of those, but then you had the
Oakland, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Just a couple years later, Super Bowls, like literally from 71 to 81. That's 5 Super Bowls. 85 season, 86 Super Bowl.
And as we said,
season.
3 and 5 years. I mean, it was concentrated because the NFL knew New Orleans was going to put on New Orleans could put on a party. Absolutely.
And then I think I had a couple shots of the Broncos in the Dome against the Cowboys. That too. There you go, right there. My producer's all over it. That's Steve Foley, 43.
Yeah, he is. That's right. Safety for Denver
Foley,
at the
43
time.
was Tulane's legendary quarterback.
Sure was.
He's the guy on the right. He still holds the Broncos
black.
record for most interceptions career, but he was a superstar quarterback when we were kids at Tulane. And when I talk about my idols growing up, Frank, Pistol Pete #1, we're going to talk about him in the next segment. Archie Manning 2, and then honestly,
Foley Macholi, baby.
It's the 2 Tulane guys I loved as a kid. I'm talking about Steve Foley at quarterback and in basketball, Phil Hicks.
Okay, and Mark Oliveira was my guy. I love
65.
Mark. He was great, man. He was so nice to us water boys. He took care of us.
He was number 65, and he was the difference maker in that 14-0. He was a legend. But and then we can even chat about how about the biggest blowout until I guess when the Niners got blew out the Chargers. But before that,
the
Bears. The Bears. Hey, what if the Bears played? What if the Cowboys played Dicka? And he goes, is it a big Dicka or a mini Dicka? Well, if it's a mini Dicka, they might keep it within 10.
Is Michael Jordan on the sideline or not?
Right there.
And of course, what you don't see is the picture of the defense carrying off Buddy Ryan right across the way.
What a legendary team. That's the team.
Yes.
And everybody talks about that one Bears defense. And that was it.
And if not for Dan Marino, they would have been undefeated the whole season.
That's right. That was the most destructive one-season team I think maybe I've
I
ever
think
seen.
you're right. I think you're right. Dominant team. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the Niners controlled that decade, if you want to just do, but that year, and then the Giants had a couple ones, but it was just such great memories.
Yep.
And then they had the more recent ones we talked about. And the Patriots, ironically, played their first 3 Super Bowls all here in New Orleans. They got the Butts beat that one. And they got beat again by the Packers. The Desmond Howard one, when he returned the kick.
And I had a side bet in Las Vegas on Desmond Howard getting a touchdown return.
Give me a little
I hopped up and did the Heisman with him. I was up there in Mandalay Bay.
That's as good as getting the first score being a safety that I got when Peyton Manning fumbled against the Seattle. That would be good. It's one thing to bet a safety happening in the Super Bowl. It's another one to bet that being the first score. I mean, I'm like, that $20 paid off well.
That's right.
All right, I got 4 digits.
And we can now legally talk about it. That's the best part.
So, and then what started their dynasty, the Patriots, is that 3rd Super Bowl they had here in New Orleans. That was obviously when they beat the 2 touchdown favored Rams. And I never bet chalk. That means I don't bet favorites.
Yep.
But the Rams were so dominant that year, and the Patriots came out of nowhere.
Yep.
And then
that was the Vinatieri kick, wasn't it?
Vinatieri, and that's when Belichick.
And some guy named Brady.
Tom Brady was the rookie. I mean, Tom Brady. It's like if this is the thing. We talk about this a lot. If Drew Bledsoe does not get hurt,
it's crazy.
He gets pummeled by the former Georgia player in the Jets game, Mo. Can't remember his last name. But he got pummeled, and all of a sudden his whole body was disconnected from himself, broken spleen or ripped spleen.
It's a Wally Pipp moment, man.
And Brady, who's like a late 6th rounder, comes in, and just the dynasty has started.
Bledsoe really never sees it again, and goes off. I think when he went to Cowboys or something.
Cowboys, decent Cowboys little run, but I mean, it's like this guy was a big time quarterback, first pick of the draft kind of guy, whereas Brady, and it just goes to show you, and it's kind of weird seeing how I was watching the Niners. I mean, I know I'm going on a tangent, but that's what we do.
No, hey,
watching the Niners quarterback, the last pick of this year's draft,
Mr. Irrelevant is now might be getting him into the playoffs.
Purdy looks good. I mean, like as good as Garoppolo was doing for this team. But my point is, Lance was the guy that was the top 3 pick 2 years ago, and I think Purdy might be the starter for the next 10 years.
Well, and Tom Brady teaches us it ain't where you start, and us as Carrollton Presbyterian guys will certainly be living proof of that. Baby, it's where you finish.
It's where you finish, baby. Now he's talking about we went. Okay, he's 4 grades ahead of me, but I've known you since I was kindergarten.
Correct.
Because I had brother and sister in that that same school, but they were 2 and 3
And your
years
brother
older
took
than
me under his wing, taught me that baby hook.
The baby
from Carrollton Presbyterian.
He used to brag about that hook. I blocked that thing so bad. But I hope you're watching, Whitney. But the fact is, that school is a small school, and now it's Stewart Hall. It's done great things since then. But some great memories. We're going to come back and chat a little bit. Unless you want to put a little touch on the Super Bowls, or we're going to talk.
Just there's no other city that hosts a Super Bowl. We would have Mark Romick here a little early today.
Last show. Right.
Yeah, last show, which you're taping now. He said it exactly right. Nobody throws a party like this city, and nobody does a Super Bowl in a walking town like New Orleans does.
Well, let me say this too, since you said that. Last year, the Final Four, same thing. I've been around basketball.
Yeah.
But whether it be an agent or really done 16 NCAA tournaments with Brando over the years. And I know a lot of college coaches. I mean, we interview them all the time.
Chris Paul was in your living room.
But all these coaches that I know, some retired, some still coaching, they all come down for the Final Four, and they said the same thing about our great city of New Orleans, and people like Mark Romick and Jay Cicero and so many people, Steve Perry. I mean, all these guys are responsible for helping bring these events, but all the coaches said, I wish the Final Four was here every year, because they go to places that they don't really care about.
Our buddy John Brady threw the party at Desi Vega with all of them in there.
Big party. That was a phenomenal party. But I mean, just saying, it's such a great town for Super Bowls, for national championship football games, for Final Fours, women's Final Fours. I mean, it's just the best. And I'm saying, because we're true New Orleanians that left, came back.
Look at Dara Schaefer putting on the Zurich out there for the golf.
Classic,
it's fast. You and I have been in the stands, both those, at the hospitality tent. That's a wonderful event.
Several times.
Nobody does it like New Orleans does.
It's a great time. So we're going to talk about some more nostalgia, because this is what we do. And this is an evergreen show, meaning like, hey, I taped this last week, so hey, I'm just telling you, I don't know what happened in these bowls. I don't know what the Saints did yesterday, but the fact is, we're going to come back and talk some Pistol Pete, New Orleans Jazz. That's right, for you youngsters, the Jazz haven't always been in Utah. They came here in '74, and I cried like a baby when they left after '79. Cried like a baby. But we're going to talk that coming right up, and maybe a little more Saints too, right here on Primetime Sports.
The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At the mid-city lanes, the home of rock and roll.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
I don't know about you guys, but we're having a blast over here. So we're talking about some old school stuff. And if you're under 30, you're probably cueing the crickets. But hopefully you'll learn something, man. This is fun stuff. Hey, we're going to switch gears because I've said it many times. I love football. I truly do. I love baseball. Played them all growing up. But basketball is my favorite sport. Playing, watching, working in the NBA, college. I've done so many games. I can't even tell you how many. Well into the thousand. But I love it. I love it. But Pistol Pete is what got me started. I truly do not. I'm too young, for once, to remember anything he did in college. I just know what he did. He averaged 44.5 points a game.
Never be touched.
I mean, the dude was like, he didn't even play as a freshman because freshmen couldn't play back then. And he had 3,667 points.
Crazy.
No one's even close to that. But the Pistol Pete that I fell in love with was this guy.
Yep.
When he came to New Orleans, he started by wearing 44, but 7's the number I fell in love with because he played 1 year at the same number he wore with the Atlanta Hawks for 3 years, number 44. He had a little Jesus look going on right there. But Pistol Pete was the hot ticket item. He's an LSU superstar. He's from Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. He went to high school in Raleigh, North Carolina, because his dad, Press, was a coach, and his dad went to LSU with him. But when they came to New Orleans, they gave up a bunch as an expansion team. You see the Abdul-Jabbar there, that's the Milwaukee Bucks Abdul-Jabbar, not long after they won the title. But Frank, when you think of the New Orleans Jazz, I mean, I remember even seeing you at games because we never missed it. That's the one thing. My family loved basketball. We were at almost every game, but these bring some of my greatest childhood memories up.
Well, you know, so I was, I guess, 12, 13 to like 16 or 17
and I was
while
9
they were
to
here.
14.
And look, I remember going down on the streetcar, getting off on Canal, and walking to the Superdome.
Yeah.
If you went to Shoetown, you got $1.50 tickets before you went out there, and you might even eat on the way home. If we got to 110 points, it was free
fries, baby, free fries.
I mean, you know, it was so exciting down there, and it was a cool thing. If you knew exactly where to sneak through the barricade to get the cheap seats, and we'd make our way down. We were almost on courtside watching that.
Yeah, I mean, we luckily had
incredible.
season tickets, so we were, I mean, that's the one thing we splurged on. We loved to go in the Jazz games, but I remember if the game was out of hand, we would just go running up and down the ramps. That was a big deal, the carpeted ramps. And look, this is when they became a team back in '74. I mean, it was just such great memories. E.C. Coleman, Aaron James, I'm talking about that first year. You know, you had Mel Counts. AJ from the parking lot. Let's talk about it. AJ from the parking lot. He's from Grambling. And this is before we really knew.
Aaron James.
Like, if they had the NBA three-pointer, this guy might have been an all-star. There was no three-pointer back then, but that one thing he could do.
There was AJ from the parking lot, and then when he really cranked it up, it was AJ from the expressway.
Hot Rod Hundley, the great announcer. But, I mean, the draw was Pistol Pete.
Absolutely.
Now, listen, as a guy that idolized this guy, I went to every Pistol Pete basketball camp. I mean, I was sitting there like
nobody had a handle like him.
Hands like
nobody.
Nobody could pass like him.
Correct.
Nobody could shoot like him. Nobody had handles. He just looks like a white guy right there. Another white guy. Look at him. He doesn't look anything special. I look back. I'm like, why was this guy? But then I realized he was the best at all these things in the 70s. I mean, court vision, everything. And the guy led the NBA in scoring 1 year, 31.1 points per game, 1976-77. And then, I mean,
that Knicks game, he couldn't miss, and he actually got a slow start. I mean, there was nothing he could do.
68 points is what you're talking about.
Yeah, nothing he couldn't do. And his passes might have been the best thing that he did. Some of those, see it here, put it behind, bring it back up.
He was a magician.
The scissor pass. I mean, I remember the scissor passes at half court. Now, of course, I caught him a little trouble later. That's where we got hurt.
We'll talk about that in a second.
But no, he was just.
That shot, though, is from the Loyola Fieldhouse. Bring that one back, Will. That one, their first year, the dome was not ready. 74-75, they played half their games at Loyola's Fieldhouse.
Where the old Buccaneers used to play.
Yeah, the Buccaneers played. But that's where we played pickup ball as kids, too. And then half the games with the Municipal Auditorium, which is unfortunately now empty after Katrina, but it's like a majestic place where they had all the Mardi Gras balls and back in the day. And then also when I was a kid, concerts. I remember seeing Gap Band and all that. But those were intimate places, 5,000, 4,000 in those places, and then they moved the Dome in their second year.
Yes, correct. And the Dome, to this day, correct me if I'm wrong, probably still holds 6 of the top 10 NBA attendance records.
I knew you were going there the moment you said the Dome.
Yes.
I knew you were going 36,000 plus at the most famous one, the 76ers, who were unbelievable. Dr. J, George McGinnis, Doug Collins, Kobe Bryant's dad, Joe Jellybean Bryant. I mean, I could go on and on. Those teams were loaded.
Jones,
Caldwell Jones. I mean, Bobby Jones, Caldwell Jones. You want to keep going? How about the Kangaroo, Billy Cunningham?
That's right.
We can't go on.
They were awesome.
But that game, you know, Doug Collins, speaking of Cam Jordan faking the injury, Doug Collins faked an injury with 2 seconds. They had no timeouts. We had a 1-point lead. It was brilliant. I wanted to kill him after the game, though. That was the 36. He faked the injury. They came running out. They called a play. They got the finger from out of bounds, and we lost.
I know. I remember like it was yesterday.
We still got the free fries.
I can still see Rich Kelly trying to guard them down in the paint, man. Oh, my God.
Rich Kelly, the 7'1" center from Stanford. I'll never forget this. The first time I was down near the court, because we had the first row of the loads right at 50-yard line, basically, midfield, mid-court. And Rich Kelly, I'm like 10. And I'm looking up at this dude. He looked like he might as well have been 10 foot something. Because I'm like, this is the tallest human being I've ever seen.
He was a shaggy head Wayne Mack with a pituitary problem. That guy was huge.
There's only about 100 people in this audience that'll get that comment. Wayne Mack was the
with the handlebar mustache.
Was the great Saints and Tulane announcer for a long time. That's great.
No,
WGSL.
It was crazy going down to those games. It was just a party. It was so much fun. And look, the Saints will always be our first love. The city is nuts about the Saints. But for that brief 4 or 5 year season when the Jazz were in town, they captivated. And like you, man, many of us were like high in our adolescence.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar there, Kareem without question was the player of the 70s.
No doubt.
There's zero doubt. For all you people that don't realize how great that guy was.
Unstoppable.
He was the greatest there was. I mean, the Lakers got him. They had to trade like the entire team just to get him to come from Milwaukee. And there he is in Milwaukee when he won. But the fact is Pistol was unbelievable. I want to talk about this 77-78 season. Pistol had just come off the highest scoring output in the history of, not history, but that season. He was the leading scorer in the NBA. They got Gail Goodrich, who, by the way, had averaged 27 a game for the Lakers for several years. A UCLA star. He won all those titles at UCLA. He was on He started on the 72 Lakers championship game with Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, Elgin Baylor had retired mid-season.
Sweet jump shot. Just
had Cassie Russell. But I mentioned this before the show. I want to say it again. These two didn't play together very long. But Gail Goodrich and Pistol Pete Maravich were the best shooting backcourt until a couple named Steph Curry and obviously Klay Thompson. Without question. Now, the problem is nobody really remembers them because Pistol got hurt.
Correct.
But they were rolling along on the way to the playoffs.
Yes, we were.
And Truck Robinson, who we have some stuff up too, was the NBA's leading rebounder, like 16 a game. I mean, he was unbelievable, and he was a great scorer. He ended up being
deadly on that 12-foot bank shot.
12 to 15, he got it
right
down.
off the glass.
And
Truck off the glass.
Second team All-Star, you see it right there. But that team was rolling, and Pistol Pete, unfortunately, the infamous game against the Buffalo
Braves, that's right.
Had Bob McAdoo, the 3-time NBA leading scorer, Randy Smith, the guy that held the NBA record for most games played. I mean, going on. But he threw a full court.
It was a Showtime,
Showtime. I mean, he was going to give you a show, and they were already winning, and the time was out, and he got injured on basically a career-ending injury.
And you knew it immediately.
And he was on the ground,
he was done
and he buckled over. And I have a friend that was not then, but the guy I ended up working with for many years, Mike the Stinger Glenn, because he called the Hawks games.
Stinger.
He was on that team,
Rathman.
the Braves, and he said Cotton Fitzsimmons didn't know the severity of the injury, of course, because that was the Braves coach who coached Pistol with the Hawks.
That's right.
And hated him.
That's right.
And he goes, it serves that son of a bitch right for trying to show us up. And obviously, if he knew how severe the injury was, but it basically, that one play is the reason the New Orleans Jazz are not sitting here still.
No doubt.
Without doubt, because the next year he tried to play with this big, bulky brace, which you see right there.
Yep.
That's, is that guarding him? I'm going to tell you something to you. Don Boozy. People are going to.
From Phoenix.
Is that Phoenix? Phoenix Suns.
There you go.
Boozy, Westfall, Alvin Adams.
Yeah.
But that clunky brace.
Fresh off that 76 series against Boston.
Boston, right. But he still was good. But one of the owners was a Mormon. And he's from Utah, Battistone. And he took the team. And his excuse was the Ogden Foods.
BS.
Was not the concessions that was.
BS.
Weren't giving him the money. So he took him to Utah, and they kept the name, and the rest is history.
And there wasn't no Sherman Copeland Superdog that caused them to leave. I'm telling you right now.
Okay.
That was him going out there. Who was in charge of Superdome concessions back in the day, right?
I mean, things weren't really.
It wasn't no Superdog. It wasn't no concessions.
I forgot about the Superdog.
Yep.
That thing was bigger than Shaq's foot.
No, there's no doubt.
And that's a 22-inch. I was like, how are we going to eat this? Cut it, put it back in the foil, bring it, and eat it for lunch.
And you had to get that Zatarain's mustard on it, baby.
And eat the next day at Carlton Press. For real. I mean,
and we didn't have hot dog day.
I know. But man, some great memories of those. I remember Gail Goodrich when he was with the Lakers, and this is crazy because now you have to almost maim a ref to get a technical.
Yeah.
But I remember at Loyola Fieldhouse, they used to play below. They had nets. That's why they call it cagers, because they used to play with nets. Not everywhere, but that's what basketball players were called, cages. People probably don't remember that. But the part of the floor was, you kind of at eye level. So we were on the third row, at this small arena, and I remember you could hear everything. And Gail Goodrich missed a shot when he was with the Lakers, and all he said was "damn." And they teed him up. I was like, I said, damn.
Being in the field house was like being at the JCC playing pickup ball.
Right.
You heard everything. You heard the receptionist at the, what's your card number? I mean, you heard everything in there. But I can just still see it, that floor level, kind of like Vanderbilt.
Memorial Coliseum, right.
So, but it was so close. You were close to the action. And I remember going back to the Buccaneer games even before that, but just watching it. And that's why I think the Jazz was such New Orleans' team, because it was that uptown neighborhood where you went and watched them that first year.
One of my first memories, and this is like, I mean, when I think of my first NBA real memories, it's before the Jazz, but it's like, and the reason I'm saying this is the reason. We talked about the Loyal Fieldhouse. I just remember watching the Boston Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks in the finals in the early 70s. And I remember seeing some of those Knicks series when they won a couple with the great Walt Frazier and Willis Reed. But I just remember those arenas. Madison Square Garden, the Boston Garden. So I remember when we got the team.
Loyal Fieldhouse.
It was like this little place where you could yell at your mom 6 rows over and be like, you could say and have a conversation. The players are hearing you.
Father McGinty's throwing the ball up and
I mean, I'm thinking it's surreal. It's like I'm not seeing. I don't remember this on TV like from those other games. And then I started getting the feel of it when we went to the Dome, though.
But that was the cool thing about the Jazz. I mean, they were our little team. That's why we loved them so much. That's why it broke everybody's hearts when they left.
It broke my heart.
How could you take this team from us?
I know, and I started getting them pretty much not long after I started getting the Saints, because I really wasn't old enough to remember 67, 68, 69. I remember a little 70. But and then the early 70s, but we were terrible. Remember, you would throw a parade. We're going to segue to the Saints, because you would throw a parade. This is a fact. Those 14-game seasons, the Saints are 5-9 right now. I remember the best season they had when the seasons were 14 games, because they didn't move to 16-game schedule in 1978. So we got a full decade plus. 5-9 was the best record, and I've said this before.
And 2-3 was normal.
We threw a parade down Broadway because 5-9. We're like single-digit losses.
By the way, WWL leads off with the ostrich race at the Saints game as opposed to anything that went on between. I remember the one game sitting there, when my uncle got me to the bandstand, and I watched the Chicago Bears come in, and I swear to God, I thought Dick Butkus killed Archie Manning at least 7 times. At least. Now, that was 71 on.
Right.
And we felt like we had some hope. We saw that we had some talent.
Right.
But going back to Billy Kilmer, I mean, there had to be 8 guys with shotguns shooting his passes as they were coming over because they're wounded ducks, right?
So Billy Kilmer was number 17, and he's in one of our picks from we did last show. But he was like, apparently I didn't know this because I was young, but the ladies love Billy Kilmer because he was
out, a rock on tour.
He was out and about.
Yes, he was.
Back in the day, kind of like Camaro would leave the Dome and just kind of pull people along on his bike.
No doubt.
Billy Kilmer was bringing them straight from the stadium to the bar.
At the Lamplighter Club.
We're going to the Lamplighter, and he ends up winning a Super Bowl losing a Super Bowl for the Redskins. There's Kilmer right there.
Yep.
He was as fast as he looks in that picture, which is not.
That's right.
But the fact is, he ends up winning. I mean, going to the Super Bowl with the Skins in '73 when they lost to the undefeated Dolphins. But the reason I want to bring up these days because all I can remember certain things as pictures. Like they used to shoot the cannon off.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they used to have like Daredevil.
They had reenactments of the Battle of New Orleans.
Right.
And like 5 Englishmen almost died when the cannon went off. Like it literally hit them. You know, right?
That's what I'm saying. And so the stories that they had, like my parents would tell, or my older brothers and sisters of the theatrics that they would do. It was like a big deal. They had people flying.
Al Hurt playing a trumpet. I mean, it was just phenomenal. They had the space pack, like you're talking about.
The space pack,
and you couldn't tell if it was the space pack or the guys with the Falstaff beer, the dome foam.
And I realized you have to be over 50
packs.
something to even understand one thing we're talking about.
And by the way, if you do want to Google something, which is really cool, Billy Kilmer, number 17, you see him in there. They used his real footage in the movie that Charlton Heston did in 1968 called Number One. So if you really want to, and by the way, historians around here have said it's some of the great time-step footage of backdrops of New Orleans that there ever was that was shot in that movie.
Yeah.
They say if you want to see what old New Orleans late 60s, early 70s looked like, that movie was perfect at doing it. That and Live and Let Die.
You mentioned the beers. They used to put, like, think of a backpack, but they'd have the thing and they would have taps on them.
Yeah.
And they would tap them up. Obviously, I'm 7, so I couldn't drink yet. But everybody else around me was, and I was watching this. And I'm like thinking, golly, and
the cups were in the dispenser.
Yeah, the cups in the dispenser.
You know, they come right out and he'd do them. And of course, when they went down to Dome Foam, they did away with them. They made you go up and get them. But yeah, old Tulane Stadium. In fact, who didn't love being at Tulane Stadium on a nice sunny day? Now, August was a bear, right? When those first couple of games.
September sometimes was too.
But it was so cool being out there on a sun-splashed day.
80,000 seat stadium you see right there. I mean, it's. When the youngsters now hear Tulane Stadium, they think of the 30,000 seat stadium that they built a decade ago. But this stadium was iconic. I mean, we mentioned it before. All the Sugar Bowls from 1935 on. It was built in the 20s. But all the great events in this place. I saw Leonard Skinner and ZZ Top.
I saw ZZ Top.
And Leonard Skinner didn't show up because Ronnie Van Zant had one thing and they had a ride. They were throwing bottles. I was 10. I was on the back of my brother's motorcycle or something.
I remember to this day saying, "What's that smell?"
Yeah, that's weed. Same here. First time I smelled weed.
That was that concert.
It's like I didn't know what it was till like I was 16. I smelled it in the quarter. I'm like, oh, that's the stuff I smelled in the stadium. Yeah, we're talking about tangents. We're getting off on them, which I like. But when they moved to the Dome in 75, you know, the Saints didn't really get decent until 78. And they had all those Pro Bowlers on that team that went 7-9. We talked about it last week, but the Falcons went 9-7, and neither team had gone to the playoffs yet. One ended up 7-9, one was 9-7, and the Saints should have been 9-7.
You're right.
They got robbed twice. Big Ben. Big Ben play. We all know the first Hail Mary that we've heard of was the Vikings against the Cowboys.
Yeah, Hail Mary.
Drew Pearson from Roger Staubach in Metropolitan Stadium up there in Minnesota, and it was like 0 degrees.
That's right.
And then this was the first one we saw in a Saints game. This was like 2 or 3 years later, and this was Alfred
And we
Jackson.
had that game won.
Now, the Big Ben, so people know, the ball was up, looked like it's going to get intercepted, but both those guys went for it. It got tipped in the air, and Alfred Jackson.
There wasn't a Falcon really around it when it first came down. We collide, and it went up in the air, which seemed like a day.
And that's what, and we lost 20-17. Tommy Myers was the lone defensive player for the Saints on the All-Pro team, or the Pro Bowl team that year. But every offensive player, you had Henry Childs, you had Archie Manning, who led the NFL actually in
Wes Chandler
in yards. Wes Chandler, the great wide receiver. Chuck Muncie, Tony Galvin, both running backs.
Thunder and lightning.
I mean, I'm telling you, it was unbelievable, that offense. And Archie was the NFC Offensive Player of the Year. Great times. And then the following year, they went 8-8. A couple more heartbreaking losses, 35-7 to the Raiders on Monday Night Football. We were up 35-7. That was 35-7.
That was a tough Tuesday morning in Carrollton Presbyterian. That was tough.
And then, I remember, because Tuesdays are chili dog day. I wanted to take chili dogs at home. That's a fact.
I remember it.
And only CPS people would get that one. But the fact is that Stabler, Branch, Bolitnikoff, who, by the way, I love that team. They came back and scored 35 unanswered points to beat the Saints 42-35. And great.
Having them 35-7, and of course, sadly, that's not the worst time the Saints blew it. Remember, we were up on San Francisco, out in San Francisco, 35-0. So we've had our share of heartbreak, but going back to Tulane Stadium and the Saints, I think what was the coolest thing about that was it was nestled in a neighborhood.
Right.
You could walk down from your home. I remember my dad, to this day, I remember my dad walking me by the hand down Audubon, which was the street that we lived on, crossing St. Charles, going down to Willow. I can still hear the crowd on the cheering from Tom Dempsey's field goal cascading all around Uptown. That was just so cool.
It's like I could hear, if you happen to miss a game for whatever reason, maybe church didn't get out because we would walk from church, and you could hear and feel it from blocks and blocks away. And I'm going to say this, and Eli Manning mentioned this last night, which is now last week, on the telecast, which Eli and Peyton do the Monday night thing, and he said something, and it reminded me of Tulane Stadium. He said, because they're talking about stadiums, and he and Peyton both said, without doubt, Lambeau is the place. And you've been there now, but I've been now in Lambeau like 6 times. But my first time was doing a Saints preseason game with Archie Manning, Tim Brando, and we had Jaworski. What a crew in the booth.
Wow.
And cool. And I'll never forget it because it was 04. I just finished being in TV. This is my last thing. I became an agent that year. And I just remember the first time going up to Lambeau. Now this is August, so it's not the cold one.
Yeah.
I went as a fan, not to see the Saints, but living in Atlanta, I saw Packers and Vikings on a night game. Then I worked some games there. But when you haven't been, and you realize Green Bay is such a small town, but there's houses.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Houses, and all of a sudden stadium. And it's just like this.
When LSU went up there, we had a huge tailgate.
Right.
I mean,
The
literally,
Wisconsin
you could trip your way to the stadium from the little houses that we had hired out.
But there's really nothing else like it. I mean, when I lived in D.C., Memorial Stadium briefly was that way, but everything.
You have to go back to Tulane Stadium. That was really that last time that you had that feel. Churchill Downs kind of has it in Louisville. It's nestled in a neighborhood, but nothing like Tulane Stadium was. And here's what I remember of Tulane Stadium. I remember when the tickets would come out in this big sheet.
Oh yeah,
the season tickets. Yeah. And they were
Perforated.
so beautiful, and they were so colorful, and you'd see them. Now, I didn't have them. My parents were too poor. But the Estacies down the street had them. And we looked like a Dickens characters. Me, Jay Culbertson, Gary Culbertson, Campbell McCool across the street would all go sit on the Estacies front porch on game mornings just in case Howard or Michael or my buddies couldn't go. I mean, we were sitting there.
I can't believe I'm giving a monkey Estes on the show. He's going to watch that.
The only thing worse was having our moms go ask neighbors if we could swim in their swimming pool. That was the only thing that was more degrading.
I wouldn't say it's degrading. If I got in the pool, I'm happy.
It was for my mom.
Yeah, right. Hey, can you let my poor boy get in the pool?
That's right. That's right.
No, but some of the great memories. Let's go further. Even when they got to the Dome, like I remember the time I bought my first car was the shoe. It was like I used my mom's car in high school, but I was working bartending. I remember I bought it from Paul Rabelais, and then, but on the set at his parents' house, I bought it from his parents, really. And this is a legendary car at LSU. I was late for a flight once, so I popped out that little back small window. I was like, and because I was like, back then the flight was in an hour.
Oh yeah.
We were leaving an hour.
Yeah, that's right.
Just park right up front and get up there. But I locked my keys in the car the night before. It was at Fred's, and I broke the back thing out, and I did make the flight. I got there in like a record 42 minutes, but. From Baton Rouge. Hate to say that, Mom. But anyway, fact is that car was named the Shoe because I never fixed the window, and it kept raining into it, so it smelled like a shoe. But people would like. But the point is the day of that game, I bought it. I'm watching on the TV, and that's when the Saints in '83 were about to go to the playoffs for the first time. The Rams.
The friggin' Rams.
I mean, and it was Bump Phillips, and he brought some immediate success. That team was the second team that finished 8-8.
We thought we were going the last game of the year.
But once again,
Lansford
victory. Just take it. Not Carney, not the baseball player. The other Lansford with the mustache, the porn mustache.
Yeah, and we had the game. That was another one we had. We gave out. We were counting our chickens. We had them in the third quarter. He hits that. I mean. We were so close.
The game
was done. It was over. We were so close on so many times. But that's why 2009 is so sweet, because we did it. I mean, and look.
44 years into it.
And you know what my best memory of 09 was? The week after we won the Super Bowl, I ride in Bacchus every year, and Drew Brees just happened to be our king that year. It was something that was in the works probably 6 months before. Him and Owen Brennan probably struck the deal way before. And when he rode with us, him and Mickey came down to the convention center, and they brought the Lombardi with them to the dressing area. And here's the coolest thing. Only in New Orleans could you have a Lombardi with that pristine silver, have about 1,000 fingerprints on it from being passed around from one ballroom dressing area to the other. Everybody that was in Bacchus touched that. By the way, I'll guarantee you there's Robert Kraft trophies that have never been out of his hands alone.
So Super Bowl 44, right? And then there's like the Saints 46 season.
Yep.
But I'm going to go back to like when they first started winning, Bobby Hebert era. Because this is when they first gave us pride.
Correct.
Because
Jim Moore.
86, 87. I mean, I remember they got to the playoffs and we scored quickly against the Vikings, and they scored like 44 in a row.
My good friend Henry Thomas from LSU, Dorman from
Great Tiger player.
Yep.
But he beat us up just like the rest of the Vikings did. And then obviously the next one I believe
Philly.
was no before that was the Bears.
Yeah.
The Bears, that was a hard fought, like
Yep,
16-12
that's right.
game or something like that. And that was Dicka. That was like a couple years after. No, it was like 3 or 4 years after, because I was living in D.C. watching it.
Yep.
And it was super cold.
Correct.
And then it was then it was actually. I think it was the Falcons one first. And then it
In
was
91.
Philly.
And then the Eagles, that's
Philly.
right,
So
yeah,
they were 0-4. And then the first time they won was now Hazlitt's team, and my mother had just died the day before.
Oh my gosh.
And we were like, and we went to the Peach Bowl. Then I flew back from the Peach Bowl to New Orleans and go to the
fumble
playoffs game.
punt.
My mom, season tickets, never missed a game. At the Dome, she had first row in the Loge.
Oh, wow.
First row in the Loge, just like in basketball.
I love those seats.
And never missed a game. 4 tickets. So they won. I knew she was up there with St.
Bless her.
Peter saying, get this team a playoff win, and they've got the Akeem
With your dad,
Aziz
who I knew
drops
so
the
well from
ball,
Carrollton Boosters.
drops the ball, and they ended up winning that first playoff game. And then when Peyton, everything changed when Peyton
Yes.
came in 06, and all of a sudden,
And you could see it. You could see it. Even though we lost to the Bears in the NFC Championship game, you could see it. You knew it was coming.
We'll talk about that beginning of that, though, because I remember the Eagles was the game we won. That was the second playoff game we ever won.
Correct.
That's Peyton's first year.
That's right.
And I remember beating the Eagles. I still have a Frenchie, painting from Jeff Garcia getting tackled by 3 or 4 Saints in a sack. But man, this has been great. This just flew by.
Are we over already? Holy mackerel!
I mean, isn't it
you and I
crazy?
can fill up 2 hours. We
I mean, we
get a
still
radio
got a few more
show.
sports to talk to.
We need to
hadn't
get a
talked
radio
about-
show.
We had talked. How about radio and TV? We had talked about how about this? The New Orleans Pelicans baseball team.
Oh, back in the 40s and the 50s,
Well, not
right there on
just that-
Tulane.
Not just that, but when they came back as a minor league team.
Well, I can go back to the originals.
Well, no, not the 40s. Huh? I mean, you can't
I
go
can
back
do
to.
that.
Well, you weren't there.
I know about them.
No, I'm not saying,
I
but
can
I remember
talk.
Ken Obergefell playing for the Cardinals minor league team
Yeah.
here in New Orleans. They played in the Dome.
Yeah, I know.
But the young people don't know. That's like
And-
79.
and-
I was going to those games.
And by the way, one of the greatest things in the Dome,
Rasmussen.
one of the greatest things in the Dome was when they would have that college round robin that they would play every year in the Dome. LSU, Florida State.
basketball.
No, I'm talking baseball.
Oh,
they
the
used to have the
baseball round
baseball
robin.
round robin to kick off college baseball in the Dome. That was
I'm going to
incredible.
go further. The Dome, Sugar Bowl Classic, and I remember Bobby Knight's team in '76, the last undefeated team to win a national championship with the candy stripe
May,
warm-up pants.
yeah.
Well, you want to go with it? Ken
Yeah.
Benson, Scott May, Quinn
Yeah.
Buckner, Abernathy, and gosh, I know the other one. It starts with a W. Wilkerson.
Yeah.
So that was starting 5, but I just remember all those games, like them coming running by, and I'm like sitting on the court, and they're just so tall.
Oh, yeah.
Great memories. Hey,
brother.
you got more tasks. You have to unload. Here you go, bro. Task performance. There's the Dome. Look
I
at
love
that
these.
iconic
I love
spot.
these, man. These are awesome, pal.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's Frank Duffy.
Yep.
It might not be the Scott Alexander show anymore. It might be with Frank Duffy. Hey, do your best Ed McMahon impression.
Hey-oh.
You're correct, sir. You're correct, sir. Hey, Johnny, that's some weird, wild, wacky stuff. Okay.
I told you I could be your Evan man.
Let's do it. I think we're going to do it. Why not? We're having fun. Hey, I want to thank Will, big time. Will Hill, Logan, and Alex. Thank you so much for staying, because this has been fun, and I want to get a show in the can. I hope everybody is having a great Christmas holiday season, and obviously Hanukkah as well, but New Year's is coming up. Y'all have fun there too. Hey, we might run this show twice, so who knows? We might be running this before. So hey, y'all just have a good 2023. Everybody be safe.